it's unrealistic to say we'll meet the 2030 target.
Use of hydrocarbons is not a solution, it's not a sustainable solution.
Considering the fact that Tanzania is a very vast country, the cost of distributing energy in terms of power lines is huge.
Hello and welcome back to Africa Science Focus with me, Selly, Amutabi. Over the next few weeks, we bring you something a little different. Through a special 3-part series, Energizing Africa, we will investigate progress towards electricity, infrastructure, and network access on the continent. The United Nations says that clean energy can power sustainable economic growth by improving access to knowledge, boosting health and well-being, and improving the lives of women and children. In our first episode of the series, reporter Michael Baruti investigates progress towards universal access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy.
Here in Sub-Saharan Africa, the number of people without access to electricity has been on the decline since 2013, according to a recent analysis by the International Energy Agency, an intergovernmental organization set up in the 1970s. But the agency predicts that disruption to investment and construction caused by the coronavirus pandemic will have set back this progress, pushing some countries farther away from achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 7, universal access to electricity by 2030. The majority of the people living without reliable access to electricity today are in Sub-Saharan Africa. And while the agency says that some countries are making good progress, such as Ethiopia and Rwanda, it is expected that by 2030, half of the world's population without access to electricity will be concentrated in just 7 countries, 6 of which are in Africa, including my country, Tanzania, Uganda, and Nigeria. Few people that can afford in big cities turn to generators and other sources of energy such as solar panels. But for most of us, they are left with no alternative at all. Diana Mbogo is the CEO of Millennium Engineers in Tanzania, and she has worked closely with the International Energy Agency. I spoke with Diana to find out if the 2030 goal is achievable.
Yes. Okay, so I know for a fact that you attended the International Energy Agency meeting in Ethiopia in 2019. So from attending that meeting, do you think it is actually still possible for Africa to achieve 100% electricity access in 2030?
I would say theoretically it can still be possible to achieve 100% electricity in 2030. But practically right now I'm not confident to say that. And this comes with a lot of things. One of them is that before the pandemic, we were looking into the 3 areas, availability, access, and affordability. But right now, scales have tipped in terms of priority. Due to the global pandemic, a lot of people have been forced to stay at home, meaning access to electricity is now even more crucial and needed. Demand has risen in terms of household, while we can see that industrial demand has lowered due to lowering of economic activities around the continent. So even those that were linked to start along next year or this year have been postponed due to means of developing those projects, monitoring, funds release, and even most countries have now changed their focus into not focusing their finances in development of projects that link into access of electricity, but they've turned those into emergency relief funds for the global pandemic, in tackling the global pandemic.
Off-grid power systems don't require a connection to centralized energy sources, and they are becoming increasingly popular. But can they solve Africa's electricity crisis? Here is Michael again.
I spoke to Christian Sariki, an outgoing country manager for Trend Solar Tanzania, a company that sells home solar systems to off-grid markets in Tanzania.
And how about the use of off-grid system to supply energy in Tanzania and Sub-Saharan Africa? Do you think it's actually sustainable?
And is it what Tanzania needs as well right now?
Yes, in Tanzania, it's something that is needed, considering the fact that Tanzania is a very vast country. The cost of distributing energy in terms of power lines is huge. Now, most of the off-grid households cannot afford the pricing for the grid electricity. Then it makes more sense to have off-grid solution cater for households that are very far from the production side. We produce our hydro.
Christian champions solar energy as an off-grid power solution. This usually involves a system of panels that can harness the sun's energy and generate electricity in even the most remote locations.
You find in most areas where we serve, even in Dar es Salaam, which is one of the capital of the country, there are areas you just go, you find there's a power line, but a person to be able to connect might need 3 or 5 poles in order to get hooked up to the grid. Now, those are our customers. They just say, okay, for 5 years I've been waiting for the population density to increase in my area so that I can bring the power line close. You can't live without power waiting for people to come closer to the area where you have your house. So off-grid solutions sort of takes care of that.
And do you think Tanzania and Sub-Saharan in particular will ever overcome this setback that we are facing now?
Okay, so I think Tanzania will be able to overcome, but so many things need to come into play. Number one is the policy framework. There were some ambitious plans, but unfortunately, the government doesn't have funds to finance the rural electrification programs. Sometimes it's like a competition. There's areas where we literally stopped from exploiting the market 3 years back until now. The market is still not served. So that's another area. Another thing is smart end user subsidies. Now, this is in the talk and in the pipeline. The government works with different stakeholders to see how to incentivize households, especially the bottom of the pyramid, to be able to purchase these equipments that we are selling. Also, there's other things like some countries, especially after the pandemic has hit hard, looked at solar and other renewable as essential service. So they designated it as essential service, which enables now the provider, us, the private sector players, to be able to continue with our operation regardless of the problems that we are facing in terms of revenue. Yeah, I believe things will get better. I'm still optimistic. Because with the six-phase government right now, I see there's a lot of hopes in terms of private sector engagement. Luckily, of lately, the government has sort of been more interested in seeing that businesses sort of come to the table and engage with the government. And I believe in our sector, in renewable energy sector, we'll have a chance to consult with the government and see how best we can scale up, which means we can improve access as expected. Although it's unrealistic to say we'll meet the 2030 target, but I think we can make some strides if the government is sort of keen in ensuring that we operate at scale.
Connection and accessibility are not the only challenges. In some sub-Saharan African countries, the cost of energy supplied by the national grid is prohibitively high for many households. Awad Milasi is the founder of the social enterprise Proactive Solar Pumps Limited. He says that affordable renewable energy could provide even the most remote communities with the means to drive their economic and social development.
I strongly believe that improving a situation whereby Sub-Saharan African can do away from energy poverty, it is a way for them to, to start helping, these small farmers or medium-sized farmers to start thinking of processing or start thinking of energizing agriculture, through improved agricultural methods or value addition. So for me, I think strongly agriculture and renewable energy or combination of the two are the most affordable ways or strategies to empower Sub-Saharan Africa.
I want to thank you, because I feel like what you've just said also ends up answering my third question, which is the advantages of using renewable energy. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't touched in this short period of time that we've talked?
Well, for me, I would want to say that time flies. For example, I think the reason why you've asked questions around 2030 is because maybe you want to see the link between access to energy and achievements of sustainable development goals. I know for sure, achieving sustainable energy by 2030 is one of the sustainable development goals. For me, I feel like it is one that supports almost all of the other goals, because if you achieve sustainable energy, then you can power agriculture, you can power access to health, you can power education, you can power water, access to water, you can power exploration, you can power a lot of things. So for me, I feel this is one area that can really help Africa get out of poverty, start their own, heavy manufacturing and industrial. So for me, I feel like this is one very important area that governments can look at, and we can empower communities, businesses, and our countries in general.
Awad Milasi concluding today's report on electricity access in Sub-Saharan Africa. And we will be looking more closely at major infrastructure projects next week in the second episode of our Energizing Africa mini-series. Before we go, it's time to hand the show over to you with our question and answer segment. This week, we hear from Samson Magombo.
Hey Africa Science Focus, I'm Samson Magombo and a student at Henry Henderson Institute in Blantyre. My question is, what caused the mutation of coronavirus? Thank you.
For viruses, mutation is a natural phenomenon and a defense or protective or kind of evasive tactic of the virus to counter or overcome our body's immune system. Some viruses mutate a lot, others are more stable. But it's not all mutations that are advantageous to the virus. Some have no effect, others can even lead to the extinction of the virus. While a mutation may also render the virus more invasive and or more virulent or pathogenic. So mutation is a survival gamble by the virus.
That question on coronavirus mutations came from Samson Magombo and was answered by our virology expert, Professor Oyewale Tomori from Redeemers University in Nigeria. If you have a science or technology question, get in touch with us directly, send a voice or text message via WhatsApp to +254 799 042 513, and you too could be featured on Africa Science Focus. For more episodes, go to www.scidev.net or subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Today's program was produced by Harrison Lois. The editors were Fiona Broom and Jackie Opera Fatoye, with reporting from Michael Baruti. Africa Science Focus is a SciDevNet production created in association with your local radio station. I'm Selly Amutabi. See you next week. This program was funded by the European Journalism Centre through the European Development Journalism Grant Programme with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.